Alright, what's going on there, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. So now that we finished talking about different types of fats, monounsaturated, polysaturated, saturated, trans fats, now we're going to break it down to the decimal. So how many types of fats do you need a day to meet your optimum calorie goal? So unlike the protein video that we talked about 2 videos ago, this is a little bit less complicated and more easy to follow. So the FDA, for those who remember, the nutrition government, they recommend us to take about 20 to 30% of our intake in fats itself. But what type of fats? As we talked about before, there are different types of fats. You have your saturated, unsaturated, and trans fats, and the rest of the other fats. Well, in terms of fats, you want to do the majority of your fats, if possible, from unsaturated type of fats. That's also your fish oils, your avocados, your nuts, that kind of stuff. However, there is a little bit of wiggle room that you could have in terms of fat intake. So the FDA also recommends us to have about less than 10% of our total intake in saturated fats. That's like the most you should have, if any. So that can be like as we talked about before, meats, that type of stuff. In regards to trans fats, because those are basics that we don't really need, you would want to have the most minimum amount as possible. Well, in reality, that's not really the case. You know, we have hot Cheetos out there, we have fried chicken, pizza, all that good stuff that we like to eat when we're stressed, when we're going out with our friends. But the FDA does recommend us to eat at least the most minimal as possible. So if you can, eat none. If not, at least the most minimum as possible. Now, let's bring an example to this, because we're all thinking like, oh, what's 20 to 30% of our fat intake? Well, let's say a person who eats about 2,000 calories a day. You're gonna get the 2,000 calories a day, multiply that, the minimum percentage, which is 20%. And you're gonna divide that by 9 calories, which is 9 calories per 1 gram of fat. And you're gonna get your total intake. And then you're gonna get 2,000 calories again, which is our calorie goal. So whether you're in a surplus, a maintenance, or in a deficit, you're going to multiply that by the most minimum amount of fat that you should be taking, which is 30%, and divide that by 9 calories per 1 gram of fat. Alright, so now that we've done our 20 to 30% of our fat intake, you're going to be getting, or a person who's eating 2,000 calories is going to be eating between 44 to 67 grams of fat. So that's the range. As long as they're within that range, within that standard deviation, they should be okay. However, but how much fat should you eat? Is it 44? Is it 67? How much fat should you eat? Well, it's really going to depend. So in terms of our calorie intake, whether you're cutting, whether you're bulking, whether you're trying to maintain your weight, you want to think about your whole macronutrient equation. Calories is broken down into your 3 macronutrients: proteins, carbs, and fats. Well, you have your estimated proteins, which is going to be whatever number you have for your body weight. And then your fats is going to be whatever your range is, from 20 to 30%. Well, for carbohydrates, you're going to be eating your leftover calories to complete your total calorie goal. Because your 3 macronutrients are based on the other 3 proteins, fats, and carbs, your fat, whatever you have in your fats, is going to be left over for your carbs. So for a person like me who likes eating more fats, such as pizza, avocados, I love my avocados, I like to use a higher fat intake. But if I was cutting, let's say I was getting ready for another bodybuilding show, then I'd probably go into lower fat intake. So that way I can eat more carbs throughout the day. Just keep that in mind. Whatever you eat for your fat, whatever your fat intake is going to be, the leftover calories is going to be your carbohydrate intake. So why do we even eat fats? Well, one of the biggest reasons we need a lot of fat is for organ protection, hormones. So eating too much fat, you're going to get overweight. Eating too little fat, you're going to deal with a lot of problems inside your system. So in terms of eating fat, you want to stay within your 20 to 30% range. Because for a person who's bulking, even if you're trying to go on a major bulk, eating too many fats, overall you're going to be getting way more fat than more muscle, because fat does carry on more easy than muscle does. In terms of losing fat, if you're eating too little fat, you can go into a lot of problems that could send you to the hospital. So again, 20 to 30% of your intake should be in fats. And here's an example. So what are the take-home points in this video? Well, like we mentioned before, you want to have 20 to 30% of your calorie intake to be from fats. Less than 10 or less than that should be saturated fat, or could be saturated fat, and then the most minimal possible of trans fats. Again, the most minimal possible trans fats. If you have any other questions or need help calculating your your fat intake, feel free to comment in the section below. You can even email us or even slide through one of our Instagram pages and then even send us a DM. Thank you.